Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Reds Rundown podcast, hosted by two lifelong Reds fans and journalists. I'm Rob. He's Joe, and we appreciate you taking the time to join us today. Joe, I know you've been looking forward to this day for over a decade, but, well, fill us in on what that is first and tell us how you're doing overall.
Yeah, a rough week last week. I got sick twice by my nephews and nieces. Don't know how that really happens, but that's how it went. Still recovering right now, but the Reds having a decent week kind of helped me over. And now we have College Football 25 releasing today, which, again, I've been waiting for some time. It is favorite video game of all time. At least it's tied with backyard baseball from way back when. But it's a good day for that. It's a good day for All Star festivities to start with the Home Run Derby tonight. We already had the Futures game yesterday and the Celebrity Softball game, and then the actual All Star game, which we have more vested interest in now, Rob, than we did at the last. So good stuff.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We will definitely be diving into that. In case if you didn't hear the news, the Reds did get another player in. We will discuss that. Also, a shout out to Cam Collier for winning the MVP of the Futures game. Rhett Lauder also looked good. Collier looks like he might be a nice little player there, Joe. I know they drafted him out of high school, so you just never know with those high school guys if their tools are going to develop, but he is starting to look better and better at a younger age than I had expected. So very excited about him as well. I am also very excited about college football. I know I will be getting in a couple games tonight. Didn't sleep much last night because of some other issues, but I may be lacking a little bit in sleep tonight as well, Joe. I know I saw you tweet out that you're planning a potential 24-hour sesh. So I'm looking forward to seeing the results of that. Hopefully your dynasties will go well, my friend.
Thank you. Yeah, we'll see how it goes. I feel like it's gonna be hard to turn off the PlayStation and go to bed after how excited I am for this game. But we'll see how it goes, and I'm sure we'll have to be waiting on people for online dynasty, so it'll end up being like I'm sitting there waiting on everyone else to catch up, which is always a feeling of dread. But yeah, it'll be a fun day. It'll be a fun day, and hopefully we have a good week with Reds baseball too.
Yeah, I can't wait. It's gonna be awesome. We'll start with our question of the day, Joe. How are you feeling at the All-Star break about the Reds? Let us know in the comments below. Let us know on Twitter. All of that jazz. If you haven't liked and subscribed as well, make sure that you do that. Joe and I are doing this every single week, every Monday, until at least the season ends, and we'll see maybe after that as well. We haven't really decided on that, but your guys' support will help us make that decision. That's for sure. We are going to dive into that as well, Joe, here a little bit later. I want to hop in. It was a great week for the Reds. It could have been an amazing week for the Reds. But let's hop into it here. Reds start off 6-0 winners over the Rockies. The first Rece Hinds game. If you don't know that name and you are a Reds fan, I would highly suggest going back and looking through the highlights. We will also be diving into him a little bit more in depth soon. But man comes up and has an absolute mammoth shot in the eighth. Also hits a double. Andrew Abbott pitches one of the best games I've seen him pitch all year. Arguably his best game all year. 7 innings, 3 hits, 2 walks, 8 Ks. At this point, his ERA was all the way down to a 3.06. The Reds shut out the Rockies. Looking great. Game 2 was a bit more of a slugfest as we had expected. The Reds did come out on top 12-6. Tyler Stevenson with was this the 2 home run game? Nope, this is the start of his home run streak. I apologize. But Benson, Hinds again, and Spencer Steer also starting his home run streak. Ellie De La Cruz adding a double. Rece Hinds was one single away, Joe, from hitting for the cycle in his second all-time game. He had added in another 2 RBI as well. Lodolo had a bit of a rough start. We're starting to see that trend. We'll have to talk about that as well. But the bullpen held it down for the most part, and the Reds were able to take care of business. Game 3 was a bit of a bummer. The Reds got out to, or were able to bring it almost all the way back here in the ninth. It was disappointing, to say the least, that they could not finish off this game. India with a big home run. Stevenson with another home run. Frankie Montas did not pitch great, but he did pitch deep into the game. 7 strikeouts, 5 earned runs, 8 hits. And 7 innings pitched. Brent Suter ultimately would end up giving up the winning run, and the Reds would fall 6-5 in a game that it felt like they should have been able to come back in, or at least play a little bit better in general. But it was Hunter Green Day. So it didn't really end up mattering the next day. The Reds win 8-1. Hunter Green was incredible. 6 innings pitched, 2 hits, 1 earned run on the home run given up to Toglia, 2 walks, 10 strikeouts, lowering his ERA to a 3.34 before heading into the break. Tyler Stevenson with 2 home runs in this game, and Espinal has seemingly refound his power stroke, Joe, because he really wasn't hitting for much power back in Toronto, but hit his 5th home run of the season. Then we headed into the Marlins. The Reds started off with a 7-4 win in that game. Carson Spires, 5 innings, 3 earned runs, 9 strikeouts, lowering his ERA to a 3.83, but ultimately would end up getting hurt with a shoulder impingement, which is unfortunate, to say the least. Diaz did allow this game to get a little closer than you would have liked, but India with another home run, Candy with his 15th, Hinds with his 3rd home run already, and Elliott with a 3-hit day. The Reds were feasting, to say the least. Then the Saturday game, 10-6 win for the Reds. Spencer Steer with a big home run. Rece Hinds with 2, including a grand slam. I believe this was the game, right? Nope, this was not that game. Holy crap, this guy has so many memories in 1 week that I'm literally crossing up the games. But he did have 2 home runs. Ellie had his 16th, Candy his 16th, Espinal with another home run as well. The Reds routed him. Andrew Abbott struggled in this one, sadly. 5 earned runs given up in 3 1/3 innings pitched. But the rest of the team came in and got it taken care of, including Tony Santillan, who got his first MLB action of the 2024 season finally. And on Sunday, the Reds would drop 3-2. It was a close game. Marlins went up by 2. Ellie De La Cruz hitting a big home run to tie the game up. But ultimately, it would end up being Fernando Cruz giving up the game-losing run here later on in the 8th inning. Nick Lodolo was amazing up until the 4th inning and could not get out of it, which we're starting to see a little bit of a trend for him as he heads into the second time through the rotation or through the order. So we'll have to figure that one out. But ultimately, Joe, the Reds do end up going 5-2 over this time period, and they are now 3 games back at 47-50. Also 3 games back, conveniently enough, from the wild card. Joe, what'd you think of this week? Better than you expected, at least, for sure.
Yeah, I had us at 4 wins. You had us at 6. We mentioned that we'd probably finish up right in the middle. We did. 5 wins is decent to expect after this. It is a little bit of a disappointing last 2 weeks for the Reds when you throw in the Tiger series too. Yeah. Going 5-5 against the Tigers, Rockies, and Marlins is not exactly great, but they took care of business this week for the most part. 1 loss to each team, and that has me feeling good. I think Rece Hinds provided a huge lift to this team when we talked about it. It's not always like you're going to bring up this guy and he's going to be an all-star, or there's likely going to be a situation where it gives you a momentary lift. But when you have 5 home runs in a week, and this is a team that some weeks have not had 5 home runs at all by a whole team, let alone 1 player, it's going to help you out. So that 1 lift from Rece Hinds, I think, really pushed the Reds forward to getting some of these wins, because without him, they probably lose 2 or 3 more of these games if you just look at the runs that they put up. Against, they won, I think, 3 or 4 1-run games in this week. So thank God for Rece Hinds. If you're a Reds fan still holding on to hope for this season, he definitely has saved some things for us.
Yeah, and let's dive into Rece Hinds here a little bit, Joe. A 1 WAR in 1 week. I don't know that I've seen that in a very long time, maybe ever. I've only recently started paying attention to WAR over the last couple of years. I can't remember a Reds player that got a 1 WAR in 1 week. Maybe Ellie. I don't know. But 26 at bat, 5 home runs, a 423 batting average, 464 OBP. He's not really walking much. We know that he's a pretty free swinger. But an 1192 slugging percentage for a 1657 OPS, 11 RBIs, 7 runs scored. This guy had one of the best weeks that I can remember. This was truly like an Aristides Aquino type of week, which is nuts to say. This guy does kind of remind me of him a little bit. I know people are like, oh, that's a boring and easy comparison to make, but it's easy because they are both big guys, free swingers. I will say Rece Hinds is younger when he's finally finding his stride. Potentially, he's never really hit for a lot of average. He's always hit mostly for power. I think he's going to probably be a very streaky guy, Joe, to be honest with you. But he's only 23, like I mentioned. Is he enough to not go and get someone at the All-Star break? Do you think that Rece Hinds is the guy, the right-handed bat that we've been looking for all season?
No, it's not enough. This will be the excuse for the front office of, oh, Rece Hinds was our trade deadline acquisition. Okay, yeah, okay, sure, front office. That's what we want to do here. He's fine. He's doing great. We cannot expect this to be sustained. I think Aquino is a good comparison for the ways that they are free swingers. We've even seen it with Rece Hinds a little bit already, that he'll swing at pitches way out of the zone. From one of his big games, his last at bat, he's coming up for a chance to really help the Reds, and he swings at one that's like at least 7-8 inches out of the zone. So that's an apt comparison. I think in a contending team, Rece Hinds might be a power bat off the bench.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if he's going to provide much more to you. You can definitely develop him and see if he can be more. But if you're trying to win this year, then yes, Rece Hinds is not good enough. If you're trying to develop people for next year, if we're deciding to sell by the trade deadline at the end of this month, which we have 15 days to right now, then yeah, let him play and see what he does, and see if he does turn into something better. See if he does fix his free swinging tendencies, because what we do know is sometimes you can improve from level to level as you go up through the minors into the majors. But if you're a big strikeout guy in the minors, you don't usually fix that problem permanently. It'll still be a big part of your game in the majors when you're facing tougher pitchers. So that's where I sit with it. But again, we have a lot to decide in these next couple of weeks. So it might be Rece Hinds is playing every day the rest of the season, because we're trying to see what we have here. If we decide to go for it, which 3 games under 500 now, which definitely something we can consider, then yeah, it's not enough to try to win with how things are currently constructed.
Yeah, so I wanted to look something up really quickly, Joe. So in 26 at bats, he has 7 strikeouts. That's about a 27% strikeout percentage. Baseball, it's somewhere between 22 and 25. He's not technically striking out all that much yet, at least in comparison to today's game. But watching him, I will say this. Aquino did not hit all pitches well. And what I mean by that is Hinds has hit multiple breaking balls and fastballs for home runs at different speeds, which means that he's seeing the ball well. And he's admitted fully that he is a very streaky hitter. When he is seeing the ball well, he feels like he can beat anybody. And so far, against bad pitching, he has shown that. I expect a major regression from him. I'm sorry, Reds fans. I'm sure you guys hate me for this, because I would love to be wrong. Joe would love to be wrong. We would be ecstatic if Rece Hinds becomes the everyday right fielder for the Cincinnati Reds and is somebody who can provide a lot more than just some pop here and there. I fully expect him to regress, sadly, just because, again, he's never really hit for average. But if he could be a guy who hits 230, 240, and hits 30 home runs a year, sure, I think we would both take that at this point, to be honest with you. That would make him a major RBI guy. I think more than likely he's going to be a 210 kind of guy, maybe a 220. If you just sparingly use him off the bench and use him against lefties, because he did also get a couple of lefty pitchers this week as well, which I'm sure helped him. His swing is very long, Joe. It is one of the longest swings that I've seen in baseball, and he uses a very long, I would assume heavy as well, bat, from what I can tell. That will play into it. People do not realize it, but they will start peppering him with fastballs up and in quite a bit. We saw it I think it was yesterday, when he hit that broken bat that broken bat out in the 9th inning. So they are going to throw him inside, and he's going to have to find a way to hit it. If he can make that adjustment, and if he can lay off the breaking ball away, then this dude may be very good. But he has not shown the ability to do that. There's a reason why he was not brought up, compared to guys like, Jacob Hurtubise got to come up before him. Connor Capel got to come up before Rece Hinds. So you have to keep all of that in check. If the Reds are serious about going after it, like you said, Joe, Rece Hinds cannot be the reason why you don't. If he takes Will Benson's spot, though, that I'm okay with. I will be honest, Joe. That's the thing that I've been thinking about literally all week is I'd rather have the righty, bat off the bench anyways. Right now, I think Fraley provides enough lefty. The weird thing is our outfield then becomes predominantly right-handed. With Slater, with Steer, with, I would assume, Stuart Fairchild gets his job back when he comes back, and with Rece Hinds, your fifth outfielder, well, not fifth, but the fifth outfielder in that group ends up being Jake Fraley. So something's got to give. I almost wonder if the Reds should consider trading him and making him a part of a deal to get something else, get something a little bit more, sure thing. Because I think there are a lot of teams that would take a chance on a guy like this. And if he turns out to be amazing and we make a mistake, it is what it is. But they're not trading Slater. They're not going to be, or they're not going to be getting rid of Slater. They're not going to probably be getting rid of Stu Fairchild. So the only logical option right now is Will Benson, and that's the only way I can see Rece Hinds staying up past the break, Joe. Especially with TJ Friedl also coming back here soon too. I forgot about that. So you have to keep that in consideration as well.
Yeah, they seem to have like an unhealthy attachment to Will Benson. That is really hurting the team. I get that he has some athleticism that some of the other guys do not have, and I get that he's fun and a locker room guy.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'd rather have Rece Hinds on the team. But if we're like, yeah, it's the same thing. It's like if we're 2 weeks from now and the trade deadline is passed, and it's like, we have Rece Hinds, we don't need to go get someone. That is a failure from the front office. It's just he had a 38% K rate in the minor leagues. That's going to be probably where it ends up being in the major leagues too. So that's not going to be good. That doesn't help our current problem of guys who strike out a lot anyway. The power is nice because he does. I know we mentioned before, Rob, that this is a team built for contact that is trying to hit for power, and that causes some issues. And he actually does have some real power.
Mm-hmm.
There's highlights going around from his high school days where he and Bobby Witt Jr. were both in the high school home run derby. Bobby Witt Jr. actually beat Rece Hinds in that, but when the All-Star game was in Washington, D.C. But I don't think this is your long-term answer. But again, if it comes down to, hey, we lose a couple of the games out of the All-Star break, we're down to 7 games below 500 before the trade deadline. Trade some of the older guys, let Rece Hinds get his run and see if he can fix it, because I would love to have guys have a chance. I think, unfortunately for the Reds, they will do that, because usually our biggest mistake with young prospects is giving them too long to figure it out when they will not figure it out. Billy Hamilton trying to hit, it just gave him how many years? Drew Stubbs, same way, center field. We gave him how many years to figure it out? And it was 1 or 2 years past the time where you're you should probably be doing better. So I love that our history is to give guys a chance. At a certain time, know when to cut that off. I don't think it'll be a problem with Rece Hinds because there are so many outfielders. But again, if we're not in contention, then yeah, I want to see what this guy can do. He's got some awesome power. There's things that he can fix mechanically with his swing. I think that can make him better. I think there's things that pitchers will start to do to try to get him out, like you said, throwing high and inside on him. I think keep on peppering in those breaking balls. He's shown a good patience to get them, but I also think it's because his swing is a little bit slow and long, as you mentioned, that he's able to wait back on those when he swings a little bit earlier on the fastball. So there's a lot to figure out here. I get we have some decisions to make in these next 2 weeks, but I would love Rece Hinds to work out, and I'd love to give him a chance if we are trying to build for next year. But I would also love to involve him in a trade for someone else if we're going to go for it. I don't know what the value of Rece Hinds is, though. How you add him to a trade? He's a solid prospect, but the K rate would scare me. I always think about this in fantasy football trades that Rob, you and I are familiar with. No one wants to give up anything, and they want to get everything in return. I don't know if Rece Hinds is anything to anyone else. I think he is something, but I don't know how much you get back for him. So that's where we'd have to think about, hey, this is a guy who would probably end up keeping, just because I don't know that people are going to, I don't want to say fall for it, but I don't think people are going to say 1 week of 5 homers is good enough to trade for this guy who in the minors had some mixed results.
Yeah, it would depend on how likely they are to make this maybe the second best part of the deal. I think he would have to be the second best part. I don't know if he could be the first. I will say this too, and I think people are going to hate me for this, but when Friedl comes back, you just send him down again to AAA. Like, he's learned some things, he's done really well, and he's going to have that hunger. If this dude comes out, through the rest of July and early August and is just hitting the crap out of the ball, and he's found a way to be more patient, his average starts going up, then that's when you look at bringing him up. And maybe you do get rid of Austin Slater, right? Like, I don't think they're going to get rid of Stu Fairchild. This is going to be the one thing that I'm going to just lay my hat on. Stuart Fairchild has been, by far and away, at least in my opinion, one of the best role players that we have had. And what I mean by that is he comes in against lefties and he gets the job done. He is fast, and he's easily been our best defensive outfielder this year. I don't think there's any doubt about that. So I know people are going to be like, but Rece Hinds, and he does have a cannon for an arm. He has a lot of great things. That's why they like him. But there's a reason also why he has fallen down prospect lists for years now. I heard about Rece Hinds, I think it was like 4 or 5 years ago when they first drafted him. Big power guy. He's like one of the only plus power guys in the entire organization in terms of how they rank prospects. But his strikeout rate has just been astronomical, and that's why it has taken him forever even to just get to AAA. So this is not just I'm going to crap on Rece Hinds. I'm not trying to downplay what he has done, because he was pivotal for this team if they are going to make a playoff run. Pivotal. If they, by some miracle, win a World Series, that man this week will have earned that man his ring. Let me put it that way. But there are guys who are more consistent, and I'm not taking out Stu Fairchild for Rece Hinds just yet. I'm just going to be honest, because that's the only other person I think whose job he could take. Because I've seen that all over Reddit and a little bit on Twitter, and I'm like, you guys are dumb. Like, I'm sorry, but like, Stu Fairchild he is having, honestly, a great year. If he wasn't having to bat against right-handers all the time, and I know you're like, but that makes him, not as good. No, his job was always to be a platoon guy. That is what he is, and that's what he is good at. And you can't really take that out of your roster, in my opinion, unless Rece Hinds is going to end up being the guy. So I'm down to give him a little bit more leeway, Joe, at least until TJ Friedel comes back, and then we'll have to see what ends up happening after that. But yeah, that's my little bit on Hinds. You got anything else to add? And again, I want to end this on a positive. This dude is doing insane things that baseball has never, ever seen before. But you cannot let the hype blind you from what the reality of Rece Hinds is most likely going to end up being.
Fairchild's hitting over 300 against lefties this year. There's definitely a spot on this team for that. At this point, Rece Hinds, at this point, I'm willing to give the guys who are hitting the best and healthy the chance to be on this team. Everything else has been burned. Like Will Benson, all the goodwill you built up last year, at this point, I've run out of patience for it. And so Will Benson needs to go down so that Fairchild and Hinds can stay up, then I think that's fine. Even if you have more right-handed hitters, we still have Friedel coming back. We have Fraley, like you said. So I'm with you. I think I've seen a lot of hate for guys like Stuart Fairchild and Santiago Espinal. And I don't like giving those guys the hate when they were always supposed to be backups or glorified role players at best, and they're being thrust into larger roles because of suspensions and injuries. Guys that I have more of a problem with, rooting for to figure it out, but have more of a problem with if I'm like a manager, is someone like Will Benson who's not hitting the ball well, consistently striking out a lot, not really helping the team win, has a negative 0.9 WAR. So I'll second your thought on Stuart Fairchild there, Rob. I think he gets too much hate. I think Espinal gets too much hate, even though they're not playing the best baseball overall. I like picking on the guys who are bench players who are being thrust into bigger roles is not cool. I don't think that's the right way to go about it. Put it that way. I'd rather pick on guys who were supposed to be starters who are still getting these opportunities because for some reason we always give these guys opportunities. So I'll second that thought really quickly, Rob. I think that's a good point.
Yeah, and I think that what we have to remember, guys, in looking at trades and stuff, we're looking for starting caliber outfielders, right? You don't want to mess with your bench guys because they have their roles. I think Fraley and Stu Fairchild are your bench guys. I think for the foreseeable future, to be clear as well, Joe. And then I think you have Spencer Steer, and I think you have TJ Friedel in center, and you need a right fielder. If Rece Hinds can be the guy that can be the everyday starting right fielder, great. That solves a lot of problems for this team. Like, an immense amount of problems. Like, this team could, like, literally end up winning 60% of their games for the rest of the season type of problem. That's how big of a hole right field has been for us. But I just don't know if that's going to happen. So I appreciate it. I agree with you, is what I'm trying to say. I just want to make sure people have the right perspective as to what we need. We don't need three guys to supplement one position. We need one guy with two backups that can play everywhere else in the outfield. And that's what Fraley and that's what Stu Fairchild do, and that's why they can get multiple at-bats. That's why you have Spencer Steer who can play in the infield. All these kinds of things. All right, time to move on. Kind of in the same vein, Joe. How are we feeling at the All-Star break? As a reminder, we are 3 games back of the wild card right now. We are 47-50. In my estimation, we have about 28 games left to lose to still have a shot at the playoffs. That would put us at 84-78. That's what the Diamondbacks were to sneak into the playoffs last year. That means the Reds would have to go 37-28 for the rest of the way, or win about 57% of their games. Now, they have been over 500 for the last month and a half. Okay, a little over a month and a half technically. They'd be a little over 500. I think they'd be. I think it's 5 games over 500. So that would be pretty close to this win percentage that we are talking about, Joe. I think a lot of these other teams are going to start facing harder teams. I think a lot of them are going to have injury issues and fatigue issues. Like, I just don't think this is sustainable for the Pirates or the Cardinals. I'm just going to be completely honest with you. I don't know if it is for us either, but I really genuinely think it's only the Brewers in our division that have the ability to guarantee a playoff spot at this point in terms of their ability to figure it out. I would like to remind people as well, CES is officially out for the year. Nick Martini may be out for the year. I know everybody loves him. He did have some really big games. Losing him, I do think, hurts a little bit, but he does get to stay. The weird part is on this one, Joe, he gets to stay with the clubhouse after the injury, and what they need him for is a clubhouse thing, so this may end up being the perfect role for him, unironically. But Carson Spires also with a slight injury that could be literally season ending if they can't figure it out and they can't kind of get that pinch to stop. That can, linger for the entire season. Graham Ashcraft is apparently hurt now as well. I can't tell if they're using that as an excuse or if he's actually hurt. I really genuinely don't know, and I'm not obviously claiming that somebody's not injured. And TJ Friedel has been hurt 3 different times. And we have so many other injuries. Obviously, Lodolo's been hurt as well. There's just a lot that has gone against us. But do you still feel like I'll be honest with you, Joe, I think this team's 5 or 6 games over 500 if people are healthy. More than just like I think if even half the injuries were healthy people, I think this team is 5 or 6 games over 500 and well in a playoff spot. But is that enough for you to make them want to go out and really make a push, sacrifice some of the prospects? I know you were out in the Yankees week. Where are you at now?
Yeah, I will still be out on the Reds. I think these last 2 weeks, I mean, they were okay, but they weren't great. We take into context everything here. So the Yankees are in an absolute free fall right now over their last 20, 25 games. They're still 18 games above 500, but I don't know if people saw how they lost yesterday, but it was just an epic meltdown. So Yankees weren't that good. Then we lost all those games to the Tigers, and the Tigers are an average team. So they're probably below average, but they're 3 games under 500. We took care of business this week, but these are 2 really bad teams, like I said. And that obviously boosts our record over the last month and a half when the schedule has been easier. The second half schedule is still relatively easy because we got all those West Coast trips done. I just don't know if it's going to be possible with all the injuries we currently have, with some guys maybe coming back but still trying to find their footing. Everyone who's come back has taken a while to kind of get in the swing of things. Every time Friedel gets hurt, it seems like he takes a while to get his batting average back up. Marte still isn't hitting the ball very well. There's plenty of examples of that. So I don't know if we're going to have enough firepower. Now, the good news, Rob, I'll end mine on a lighter note, is if you are trying to believe, there are a couple of reasons to do so. First, the National League stakes this year. There's a couple teams at the top. There's plenty of room to get into the wild card hunt there. 2, if you like Pythagorean win percentage, which is basically taking the runs scored and the runs given up, should be 8 games over 500 right now. I think is what the last stat I saw. That's a Bill James thing. Is very sabermetrics when sabermetrics were still really cool. Now they're not as much anymore. So there's definitely a world where if they just even out the consistency, even that they're above 500 right now and ready to go. I just every time we think that like, oh, if this guy comes back, it'll be great. Well, that guy doesn't hit, or this guy doesn't do that, and then we come to, oh, this guy got hurt again, so we have another guy out. So I'm saying I'm not getting my hopes up. It's certainly possible. If you want to believe, I will not hold you back from believing. I'm afraid they're going to win like the first two games out of the All Star break. They're going to draw me all the way back in, and then like they usually do, they'll end up kind of splattering after that. But I will say I will not hold it against anyone who wants to keep on believing in this team.
The thing is for me, Joe, is yeah, I was going to point out the run differential is only a 38, or is a 38, which is actually one of the best in the National League. It would be fifth best in the National League, with only the Braves, Brewers, Dodgers, and Phillies all being there. The Braves are 11 games over 500. It is 9 games now, Joe. We would be 53 and 44 according to expected win-loss. Now, nobody really ever has that. They always play a little bit above or under. It's very rare that a team plays exactly at their expected win-loss, but this is a pretty dramatic difference for the Reds right now. Here's what I'm going to say. I believe two things. I believe that, yes, people coming back from injury can be helpful. I think there's a lot of talent still on this team, and I think the top end of their rotation is good enough to where if they could sneak into the playoffs, they might actually be dangerous, because facing Green, Lodolo, and Abbott, that could be pretty scary, to be honest with you. I personally believe this. They have a lot of prospects. They do not have enough room for everybody. They just don't. Like, just because of the fact that you have to give some people enough time. It can't be like Noelvi Marte. Yes, I know he was hitting horribly. He's actually started to hit a little bit better. He did this last year, if you remember, Joe. His first couple weeks were really bad, and then he spiked his average all the way up to 300 because he was batting 350 for the last 3 weeks of the season. He's not streaky necessarily. He's never shown that even in the minors. He's just somebody who may just take a little bit longer. He's not the Ellie or the Rece Hinds that comes in and just instantly hits. He is somebody who takes time. I'm going to say this. I think if the Reds decide that, and they can find a premium right hand, or a premium bat for right field, that is not going to cost them an arm and a leg. That's not going to cost them a Cam Collier or an Edwin Arroyo, even though I don't think you can technically trade him because he's injured. Or even if you want to say you're giving up on Chase Petty or whoever, right? Nick Kroll has done a good job for the most part in trades. If he can go out and find a real bat, not an Austin Slater level bat, but a real bat for the outfield, I would say they should try to go for it and go out and get a reliever. Although it does look like, Hunter Harvey just went for the Royals' second best prospect. So I don't know how deep the Royal system is right now. I feel like it's still pretty deep, so I don't really know, Joe, but it does look like back-end arms are going to be at a premium yet again. I wouldn't mind even if the Reds literally shuffled around their bullpen, since they have enough guys right now, it feels like, to be able to get through the season. I know I'm saying trade for a relief pitcher, but I'm talking about a back-end guy, because right now it's been Diaz and Cruz that have been struggling and putting us into bad situations. Maybe shuffle around some of the, middle relief guys. Emilio Pagan is probably going to come back at some point this season, as much as I am not his biggest fan. But I feel like if they could go out and make those two moves without giving up the entire farm and still have some of your best prospects, not all of them, but some of your best prospects there, I feel like it's worth it, especially if they have control. Because right now, the reality is, to me, Joe, we for sure do not have an outfielder in my mind that is there to take that spot. I just don't feel that way. So you need that position anyways. Whether you go out and you sign somebody in free agency, or if you can get a good trade, you can go do it. And bullpen arms are a dime a dozen, but they are expensive. But if you're going to go out and get an outfielder, you might as well go out and get another back end of the bullpen guy. He doesn't have to take Diaz's job. You can go out and get a really good setup guy, because I just don't think Fernando Cruz, I think he's lost some of that magic, sadly. So that's how I would go about it, Joe. I think that you can do that without totally tearing apart your future, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I think Nick Kroll has done a good job when he has to trade players who already have value and get prospects in return. I don't know if he. I hate to bring up fantasy football again. He reminds me of the fantasy football manager who never wants to give up his young guys or never wants to
Hmm.
trade any of his guys. And he just like you don't get any good players doing that. You can keep on building and building and having young guys, but you don't actually do that. So I'd be interested to see what he does if he does try to be aggressive this year. I don't think he is going to be.
No.
Um, I I would rather keep the young prospects this year and maybe go for it next year when we have more life and hopefully better injury luck. Not going to hold it against him if he decides to go for it, unless he decides to give up a shit ton of prospects for one player that maybe doesn't have much control or is going to leave at the end of the year for a rental. To me, this just highlights things we didn't do right. So we knew about some of the injury problems in spring training. JD Martinez was available, outfielder, designated hitter. He has played 66 games and he has 64 hits. He would rank fourth or fifth on the Reds right now, and he's only played 66. That's like 2/3 of the games. That's like we did not we could have taken that step for a right-handed hitter and solved that problem, but we didn't want to spend money. We want to keep our young prospects. We don't want to spend money, so it's hard to see how the team gets better. They'll incrementally spend like, oh, we'll get two free agents this offseason. We'll go get Frankie Montas. We'll go get Jamer. And that's great, but we had a specific need that we saw in spring training and we just didn't address it. So to me, it's going to be hard to see, hey, we're actually going to address this now when we have prospects that I think Nick Kroll has become attached to, and it's not for bad reason. Like we have some good players, and our farm system is pretty good. But I find it hard to believe we actually will. If you're asking if we should, yeah, I think it just still depends on how we come out of the break. I know we keep on saying it depends, and that probably sucks. But if they do, win 6 out of their first 9 games out of the break, it's a big long rip out of the break, 9 games, and we've got the Rays and the Braves in there with the Nationals too. If you win 6 of those games, maybe you go start doing it. If you win 4 or 5, maybe you don't. It sucks to keep on saying that. Hey, we have to wait. But I it would be pretty awful if we made a trade for some guy, even if they do have control. If we're tied to a guy that we're not 100% sure about, if we have to give up prospects we actually like, and then we don't end up competing. So I'm kind of I don't mind his thought process. I would just be interested to see how he does it if he does get to a point where he has to be aggressive and go get a player who is very good to help us out, because usually it's the other way around. It's us selling.
Yeah, we'll have to see. I mean, who's even going to be really available when Brian De La Cruz is probably one of your best options right now? That's the Marlins would be the most interesting team to me, just because I think that's the kind of team and organization that would take a chance on a Rece Hinds. To be honest with you, Joe, like that's who I've been thinking about the whole time, or even a White Sox. Their general manager is known for falling in love with a player very quickly and wanting to go get them. So there are players that we can go get that you can have control over, that you can, keep around for a while. I'm not even going to for sure say that this should be what they should do in terms of like, it really just depends on who's actually available and what their price is. But I do strongly encourage fans to take a look. And I really hope that Nick Kroll, which I know he's not listening to this, but I really hope that he does his due diligence to find an outfielder. They just have to. And it can't be, oh, we're going to move Jonathan India there when Matt McClain gets back. Or, like they already did that with Spencer Steer. And it's worked out. He's not been a great defensive left fielder, but I think he'll get better as time goes on, to be honest with you. I think that's also probably affected his batting average a little bit. And I know it's just like, what's really frustrating for me right now, Joe, is we have a lot of really good young guys, but we also have guys that are peaking at weird times. It's like we're in such a limbo state where it's like, I just wish we could have seen this team hit. Like, I just wish we could have seen Matt McClain be there for the whole season, really see what CES could have done when he was not injured. Like, there are just so many question marks as to what this season could have been. I wouldn't even mind a rental if it cost us a nobody type of guy, or like a bottom, of our top 30 prospects kind of guy. Just to see like, hey, we're not planning on you staying long term, similar to Montas, but we're willing to give up a little bit to see if you can be that guy for us down the road. I mean, he has been good at finding guys. I think the Reds have done that as well. You found people like Sonny Gray and have rehabbed their entire career. Like, I want to see them just go find somebody. And while I love Jesse Winker, if they end up going out and freaking getting Jesse Winker from the Nationals, I will honestly crap bricks. Like, I don't want him, as much as I love him, and Joe knows how much I've loved Jesse Winker. That is not the type of guy that I want. I want a consistent guy. I don't care if he's a consistent 265 hitter. We could use that in the worst way right now. A 265 hitter with 25 home runs a season would be perfect. I don't know who those guys are right now. We'd have to look them up, but that's the type of guy that I'm looking for, Joe. So we'll see. But
you mentioned JD Martinez, 264 hitter right now, worst of his career. But oh my God, every time I'm sorry, I get PTSD because I wanted him really badly.
He would have been perfect for this team. I watched a guy doing a Cincinnati Reds MLB The Show playthrough, and that was the first thing he went out and did is sign JD Martinez because he does fit exactly, and he would have been a nice veteran guy. Like, he's always been a consistent bat. I mean, yeah, he would have been perfect for this team. I wish the Mets were out of it because then maybe that would be the type of guy you could go and get, but the Mets are not out of it. So, and they're not going to give up.
No, definitely not. They're on a hot streak since that Grimace meme stuff came out. But
wild.
We also saw this week Will Benson went on a podcast and talked about how big of an impact it was not having veterans in the clubhouse. They talked specifically about Joey Votto, and we talked about it in the preseason. There's not much veteran leadership on this team, and I think that would definitely help you get out of some of these dry spells and make some of the offense more consistent. Even if Joey Votto hasn't been the most consistent the last couple of years, just his ability to kind of work with the players on the team and maybe give them more confidence. I think it is something that's missing. So JD Martinez as well, a veteran guy. I just wanted to bring up that I don't know why anyone's interviewing Will Benson right now on podcasts when he's playing this way, but I mean,
he's a nice guy.
I do think there's an element. I'm sure I love Will Benson for what he brings to the team. If I were manager, I couldn't give him the at bats, but I do think that he hit the nail on the head where it is something that is missing from this team right now is veteran leadership, and there's a lot of guys who are struggling and inconsistent, and that might be a small reason why.
I agree. We'll end this real quick with team leaders, just with our check-in here, Joe. Ellie has been on a tear. 17 home runs at the break. There's a real chance this guy has 30 home runs and like 80 stolen, probably more like 70 stolen bases by the end of the season, which is insane for how young he is. If he can truly bat like 270 plus this season, Joe, I have a real distinct feeling because his right-handed hitting has been way better lately. There's a real world where Ellie De La Cruz is like a 290 plus batter for a while. His patience has gone up. His strikeouts, I know he's still leading the team, but his strikeouts compared to where he was at the beginning of the season have gone down dramatically. Like, it's interesting to me. RBIs, Spencer Steer. It feels like he hasn't hit in like 2 months, but he still has 60 RBIs. It feels like he just gets a big hit when they need it. Ellie, obviously 46 stolen bases. Nobody's even close to him right now in baseball. Walks, Indy with 45. He had that streak for a while there where he was like walking every other bat. I think he had that game where he walked 4 times. So no surprises there. Strikeouts, like I said, Ellie's with a 127. And then an OPS, Ellie with an 830. Ellie's our best player. It's not a surprise. Any thoughts on stats real quick before we move to our other all-star for the Cincinnati Reds?
I got nothing. I'm with you on Ellie. I think there's a big chance for the second half for him too.
I can't wait, dude. He's looked so much better. If he can, now my biggest gripe is his defense, which I know he'll get better at as he gets older and with more time. So it's like, I feel like people aren't talking about it, I think, enough. It sounds weird to say, but like we're watching the evolution of a young player who is definitely turning into at least a star. And I love the fact that he declined the home run derby. I respect that so much because they've been trying to get him in it for the last 2 years. I think he'll eventually do it, but I think he wants to be a really good player before he does it. So much respect for him. Hunter Green named to the All-Star game, Joe, literally was the next alternative as soon as somebody got hurt. I can't remember who it was, but as soon as they got hurt, Hunter Green was the guy in. I think it's well-deserved, Joe. I'll be honest with you. I think he has been lights out this year. A 3.34 ERA. He now is right there with Abbott and Lodolo in terms of ERA. He's given up less home runs this year. He's one of the top guys in strikeouts. His walk rate has gone down exponentially. His batting average against is 200. Dude, Hunter Green, looks really good. And I think people, again, because we've heard about him for so long, forget he's only 24 years old. Now, he'll turn 25 this season, but this dude has a lot of good baseball left in him, and the Reds are getting the majority of his peak for a very low price. This guy is starting to seriously look like the ace that we had hoped that he may be one day.
Yeah, I did not. I guess I did think that he would do this well this year because I think my hot
Mm-hmm.
take when we did a hot take before the year was that he'd be in the Cy Young running, and I guess make the All Star game even as an alternate, you're still somewhat there. He needs to bring that ERA down to really get into the mix. There's some guys with some ERAs that are like a point or two almost lower right now, almost 2 points lower. So he
Yeah.
needs to work on that. But if you look at the WAR, he's doing great, 3.7 WAR. I think he's a guy that it's good that we locked him up early. I really have mentioned we wanted to do the Braves way of thinking, where you get these young guys, you get them on deals early, so you save money in the future, and that gives you some more roster flexibility, money flexibility, and everything. I'm excited for the All Star game. I think the biggest thing for this All Star game, as opposed to ones in the past, is we've had some like legends who are at the end of their run make the All Star game the last several years, like all that type of stuff. This year it's about the young guys. I know I
Mm-hmm.
mentioned it last week too, but like we have Ellie in the All Star game. We have Bobby Witt Jr. We have Paul Skeens. We have Hunter Green. All these guys who are going to be the next generation's big stars have made it. You're going to be seeing all of those guys be on jerseys for the next 20 years. I think, and it's good to see Hunter Green get the nod here, and good to see that they recognize small markets here sometimes too.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I love it. I'm sure David Bell being on the staff maybe had a small bit to do since they do get to be the ones to pick pitchers, but I think it's earned, to be honest with you. Really pumped for him. He will go out, and I'm sure he may even pitch, honestly, because he's going to be on his normal rest. So there's a chance he'll get an inning there. Whether or not it'll mess with the Reds schedule or not, and David Bell allows it, we'll have to see. That was a topic on 700 that I was listening to, so we'll have to see what happens there. Last thing, sorry guys, even though the Reds aren't playing this week until later in the week, there's still a lot to get to because the Reds also had the draft this week. Joe, Chase Burns out of Wake Forest. Everybody was 100% sure it was going to be the kid out of Georgia. The Reds surprise everybody and take the best arm in the class, back-to-back years of the best arm in the class, by the way. Both of them out of Wake Forest, which is pretty wild. Insane arm. He's throwing upper 90s, tops out at like 102, they said. 4 solid pitches, including a knockout slider. He's got a curveball, and I want to say a changeup. I'm sure he'll develop a splitter because basically everybody is. It reminds me of Hunter Green and Brett Lauder. It really does. Fastball slider, getting those extra pitches reminds me a little bit more of Lauder than Green, but that may just be the Wake Forest thing. We'll talk about him in a second. Tyson Lewis as well, shortstop, high school, was apparently getting some first-round buzz. They think he's got a lot of talent. It's just going to take him a while to get to the MLB, so you may not hear the name Tyson Lewis until this crop of players, honestly, for the Reds has either matured completely or are gone, which is sad, but that's generally how it goes. Then they also got Luke Holman, right-handed pitcher out of LSU. That's the one I don't really know much about, to be honest with you. So I'm going to let you're the college baseball guy, you watch these games. Talk to me a little bit about Burns and Holman.
Love the Burns pick. First, I'll say there was a lot of Reds fans upset that we didn't take Condon out of Georgia, and they were calling him like a generational prospect. He is not a generational prospect. We had a generational prospect last year. It was Paul Skeens. We've had him before. Steven Strasburg, Bryce Harper, those kind of guys. He's a very good player. I love this pick from the Reds, and it's kind of up their alley, right? They take pitchers out of college and they take high school hitters, specifically at the middle infield, is kind of what they do. Chase Burns started his career at Tennessee, then goes to Wake Forest. He is an insane man, which I love in a pitcher. He goes nuts on the mound.
Yep.
He has all the energy you're going to want. He throws over 100 with his fastball. He has a slider that's nasty, a curveball that's pretty good, working on a changeup right now. I really love this pick. I know Reds fans might be upset, but I think the floor for him is higher than Condon's was, and I think the ceiling is also higher because I think he can be an ace. And I'm not sure Condon is that guy. Now, there's other guys that could have taken too. They could have taken Jack Caglianone from Florida, who's a pitcher, first baseman. But I like that they went with a pitcher. I like that he was out of college. Pitchers out of high school, unless they're Hunter Green, who are top of the top, very tough to have those guys work out. So I like that they have this strategy. I think he's going to be very, very good for us in the future. Now, Tyson Lewis, Not as big of a fan of this pick. He's from Nebraska. He does not have as much at bats throughout his career because the teams who are up north do not get the chance to play as much as the guys down south. I would love to see him actually go to college. He was an Arkansas commit. It's within the range that they thought he'd be picked. He was the 39th ranked prospect on the MLB.com's draft prospect ranks. So I mean, it's okay. Like they like the high school hitters thing. We'll see if he works out. If I had to pick a guy who's not going to work out from this group, it's probably him. But that's just how it comes when you have high school kids being drafted to a league they may never play in for 5 years at the minimum, maybe even more. So, Luke Holman, top three in the SEC in ERA and strikeouts. I think this was a good pick. Also, right around where his value was in this draft. I will say this is the guy I know the least about as well, but he did do pretty well in college baseball's best conference. I'm very excited for these picks. I get why people might be mad because they think, oh, our immediate need is an outfielder. Let's go take one. That's not how the MLB draft works. You don't take a guy like Paul Skeens being up this early is abnormal. That does not happen. He got drafted last year. He's already in the All-Star game. That doesn't happen. So you don't draft for need right now. You might draft in the later rounds for depth. Like, hey, we have 4 catchers in the organization. We need 5 more. Like, you might do that. That's fine. Whatever. But that's not how you do it. You do value. You look at guys' future projections. I am huge on Chase Burns. I know I talked about him. We talked about his team, Brett Lauder having a teammate that they might go after. I'm so happy with this draft class, and I do not understand people who are not. They will be able to find an outfielder in free agency if they want to. They will be able to trade for one. But getting a guy like this who has nasty stuff and 2 pitches right now that are MLB ready, and maybe a third with that curveball coming out, I'm so excited for this. So I'm big on this draft class, Rob. I think their strategy of doing high school hitters and college starting pitchers is very, very good, especially this year, Rob. Something weird's happening in college baseball because numbers are up right now. Like hitting numbers are totally inflated. They don't know whether it's the baseball. They don't know anything about how that's working out. So yeah, we have those 2 guys that could have gone after Condon or Jack Caglianone, who had awesome power numbers and were hitting the crap out of the ball. But everyone's hitting the ball, so the safest pick might be the guy who's pitching that well against these guys right now, and Chase Burns and Luke Coleman. So I love the pick. For everything that's going on with college baseball, with everything that's going on with the Reds, I love this pick. I get that people want an outfielder. It's just not realistic to draft an outfielder and say, oh, you're going to be on the Reds next year when we need you, when by then the roster will look completely different. So good stuff.
Yeah, and let's not pretend, guys, pitching, especially in a ballpark like Great American, is important. And pitching does win you championships. And Joe and I were talking about it. Imagine a world where Andrew Abbott or Nick Lodolo are the 4th or 5th best starter on your team. Now, they wouldn't go down that far, most likely. But imagine a world where you have Hunter Green, Chase Burns, Rhett Lauder, Andrew Abbott, and Nick Lodolo. That's probably one of the best pitching staffs in baseball. It might be the best young pitching staff in baseball, at least rotation-wise. So that's pretty insane. That also allows you to not have to worry as much if Connor Phillips is going to develop or Brandon Williamson's going to come back healthy or all these other things. Those are the kinds of guys then you can, like you said, trade because you have a premium at pitching and everybody wants pitching, guys. Everybody. It's very rare. So taking a pitcher here, especially if he's as good as he is or looks to be, that makes sense to me. I give this an A+ personally. I understand that people wanted Condon. I just was just paying attention because I was like, oh, they're choosing between the 2 best hitters. Whoever doesn't go is who they're going to take because I do think there'll be a pretty quick path for one of those guys, maybe both of them, honestly. But in the Reds, let's not pretend this as well, Joe. If everything plays out, they're not going to be drafting this high again. So taking a really good arm this early, a consistent one that's gotten more experience, like you said, than a high school arm, makes a ton of sense to me here. Very, very excited about this pick.
Yeah, and if anyone's wondering, like, oh, Joe's like he loves young prospects. Maybe he he just likes these guys who liked anyone. This guy, I'm not a Tennessee fan in any sport. I do not like that school personally. He started his career at Tennessee. I have reason to not like this pick. That is subjective. I'm trying to be objective about it, and I love it. So if that eases anyone's minds on the pick, hopefully that helps because I think this guy can be a legit star with the Reds, which gives them so many valuable arms in this farm system, and also we have some of these young high school guys like you mentioned with Cam Collier who are starting to step up a little bit more and more as time goes on, and obviously Rece Hinds at the pro level, the guys that we've had for a while out of the high school ranks, and we'll see how they do.
it's going to be fun, guys, because let's not forget, like, if Burns does well, now, remember, the Reds did basically take Mike Leake and then have him starting the very next season. So there is precedent for it. That's the old regime, but there is precedent for it. Look, man, if Burns has 2 pitches already that are MLB ready and he works on a third, we've seen what that can do for Hunter Green, right? That third pitch for Hunter Green has been huge. I'm not going to say that Burns is going to turn into the next Hunter Green. We don't know that. But what I will say is, again, if you end up getting Rhett Lauder, if he figures it out over the last second half of this season and he does really well coming out of spring training, dude, that rotation is dirty. Nobody's going to want to face it. We could score 3 runs a game instead of 4, which most people are going to be like, well, that's not that big of a difference. That's a huge difference. You could genuinely score 3 runs a game and probably win most of them if you get one more good bullpen guy. Like, that's it. Like, and let's not forget, too, Abbott, Lodolo, and Hunter Green are pitching deeper and deeper into games. They're getting 6 and 7 innings very consistently. This team is still building up. As much as I want them to go for it, they are still building up. The future is still very bright. And they've had mostly a lot of really good hitters that have come up over the last few years. You add in the pitching with this, dude, then you're not going to have to worry about injuries. Man, like, if you want, like, Carson Spires and Graham Ashcraft are sitting in AAA and Brandon Williamson, dude, and you could bring one of them up whenever somebody gets hurt, great. We love that here. It's awesome. So I'm very ecstatic the more I thought about this pick.
Yeah, absolutely. We should all be excited. I'm interested to see. I know it was a big talking point for us off podcast and then on podcast when we talked about the start of the season. Interested to see what they do with Burns and Holman now. Do they let them pitch at the end of this year? Do they do what they did with Rhett Lauder and shut him down? I'm a big fan of letting them pitch and to start building up that stamina to go a full MLB season. Now, they do let them pitch longer in college games because they have less starts, so they do have some sort of stamina that they learn. But I would love to see them, even if they're pitching every 6th day, if they're pitching on every 6th day but only pitch 3 innings. I would love to see these guys get some rips in at the end of this year instead of doing what they did with Rhett Lauder, but that's something that remains to be seen. We'll see if they let them test out their luck in some of these rookie leagues that are starting up.
And last thing I will say, real quickly, is he is still very young. Most people are like, college guy, gonna be old, 23 maybe, you know, right? He's 21, Joe. He's still only 21, and he is only about halfway to his birthday. So, birthday start. He would be 22 starting next season. So, still very young. Easily could be a big part of this Reds team, even as early as next year, to be honest with you, if he is truly as MLB ready with those 2 pitches as everybody says. So, big thumbs up for the Reds there. I can see what they are trying to build. The only criticism Joe and I have is, if you're going to go for it, you got the prospects now to be able to trade. I think that truly as well, Joe, this Burns and Holman pick allows you to feel comfortable maybe trading some of your pitching depth in the minor leagues, to be honest with you. So you'll have to keep that in mind as well. I bet the Reds were ecstatic to get Chase Burns. Apparently he came like a month ago and loved Cincinnati. So that also had a big effect on them picking him. All right, Joe, this has been a long one. Let's get into the Nationals real quickly because we will be playing some baseball, some Reds baseball on Friday over the weekend. We are 2-1 against them. As a reminder, we started out the season against them. Here's my projected, just in case if Green ends up pitching on at the All-Star game, which I think he might, honestly, just based on everybody's kind of days off and whatnot. Lodolo, Abbott, and then Green on Sunday. That would be his natural day of rest after a Tuesday game. So I can see them doing that. If he doesn't pitch, then I think it's going to be Green, Lodolo, Abbott, or some combination of the 3 of them against the Nationals, unless if they want to give Lodolo maybe a little bit more time to figure out whatever's going on. Nationals, Kyle Finnegan. Horrible year last year, much better year this year. Started off terribly, but he's 25 of 29 in terms of saves. He's been one of the better relievers. I actually think he might be a guy that they might end up trading. So very interesting arm to watch. Lineup has consisted of CJ Abrams, top prospect James Woods has come up and been decent for them. Lane Thomas, Jesse Winker, Yohan Yepes, Luis Garcia's having a good year. Keibert Ruiz, Trey Lipscomb, Jacob Young, and then some combination of Riley Adams. I think Joey Gallo's going to be back from injury by this point. Harold Ramirez, Ildemaro Vargo, and Nasim Nunez. So, look, Joe, this team has been better than expected. but they're still below average. It's really just been Abrams, Garcia, Winker, and Thomas. I don't even know if Jesse Winker will still be on this team by the end of the All-Star break. There's a very real chance that he could get traded. I think he's going to be one of the top bats that people are going to be going after. He's been having a good year for the most part. Jake Irvin and Trevor Williams have also been really good for them. Seems like Trevor Williams has on and off again years when he's healthy and whatnot. Bullpen has also been okay. Their team ERA is a 4.14, I think. Not great. They have one of the lowest power numbers, only 80 home runs, which is second last to the Marlins. They don't strike out a lot. They will steal. They don't give up many home runs as well as a team pitching-wise, and they've already started to trade away their players. So we know where their season is going. How are you feeling about this National Series coming out of the break, Joe?
Yeah, I disagree with you. I think this team is garbage. Third worst team in the National League. They played well at the start of the year. They've obviously lost that. They've tried to get veterans to kind of like figure things out. Like Joey Gallo, as you mentioned, he's hurt, might be back for this, but Joey Gallo's hitting like 190 or something back. Like that. I don't even have the stats in front of me. Trevor Williams, you mentioned he's pitching pretty well, but he's been hurt. We'll see what's going on with that. I have not seen an update on that in a while, actually, so I don't know what's going on with that. They do have some young, promising players, but this should be a series, if you want to compete, that you definitely need to win, and if not win, sweep. I'm going to say they go 2-1. I think we have obviously our three best pitchers going up against them in whatever order they decide to do after the All-Star game. At least I would hope that's what they're going to do. You never know sometimes with these decisions, but 2-1. I think it's all mentioned. There is still some good young players on this team. They can definitely get beat. Hoping they're not going to hit those dry spells, but I think that they can win 2 out of 3, and then that puts them in position the rest of the road stretch, which is against the Rays and Braves, to, if you can get a winning record in the rest of that puts you in contention to maybe go get someone.
So to be clear, I don't think this team is good. I said they've been better than expected, but they are still below average. I wanted to give them some credit because I thought this was going to initially be one of the worst teams in baseball. Then they seemed like they were doing okay, and now they've fallen off pretty hard. When Jesse Winker is one of your best hitters, again, I love him, and I really hoped that he was going to pan out more than he has. You're not doing great. And I do think that the Reds have a good opportunity. Abrams is a lefty, I believe, or is he a switch hitter? Remind me.
He's a lefty, I believe.
He is a lefty. Check. Okay. I think Winker, I know Winker is, and I want to say Woods is a switch hitter, but I can't really remember on that one either. But my point is you got a bunch of lefties starting against them. You got Hunter Green, who can seemingly go against anybody. I think the Reds needed a break, big time. Only Ellie and Hunter are not going to get their break necessarily, but they'll still have 2 or 3 days off before. The Reds are good, I think, at coming off of breaks and doing pretty well. They also got Ellie a day off recently, I think, with anticipation of him being at the All-Star game. So I'm going to pick a 3-0 on this one, Joe. I'm going to be honest. I think that the Reds, I just don't think this is a very good lineup, and the Reds do look ahead, I think, sometimes. You can't overlook the Nationals, but you get the Braves and you get the Rays. The Rays have been underperforming. The Braves are without their best player, but their pitching staff has been wildly good. Luckily, I think we're going to be missing some of their best starters since we're going to be getting them in the second series, so that may help us at least a little bit against them, but you're going to go into the nation's capital, then you're going to go to Atlanta, and then you're going to go to Tampa. So you got to try to win some of these games, like you said. I think 6 out of 9 would be awesome. If you start out 3-0, then that gives you a little bit of wiggle room against the Atlanta Braves, to where if you can just win one game against Atlanta, you're still in a really good spot. So I am going to pick a 3-0. I think this team is starting to falter, and I really do think they're going to start trying to trade off their pieces here as soon as possible. I really wouldn't be surprised if somebody like Winker's gone. Even there are talks that Jake Irvin might be gone, and Kyle Finnegan. So, I think they're really going to build around Abrams, Woods, and Thomas. I think that their top 4 are pretty solid. I think Garcia and Ruiz can be solid as well, but they still need some time to marinate to get better. So I'm going to go 3-0. I know that means they're probably going to come out and we're going to go 3, and then the season's going to be over. But, we'll have to see what happens here, Joe. If the Reds do go 3-0, that would put them at 500 and probably within 2 games, I'd have to say, of the wild card, which would be pretty big for them. You know what? I will say this. I'm at least proud that this team has stuck together, Joe. They've found a way to still be in it, despite the massive amounts of injuries and just everything not really going their way. If they can hold out, it is starting to sound like Matt McLain is going to try to make a comeback, Joe, if they're still in it. So if they can hold out long enough, maybe get one more bat until he gets back, then this team could be in a really, really good position, Joe. I'll be honest with you. So we'll have to see what happens. But do you have any wise words before we head off?
Yeah, you might be wondering why the Nationals haven't started selling off. I kind of wonder that too. With they have 10 wins already this year over the Marlins, Rockies, and White Sox, and that really inflates their record. Just it stinks that we're in a division that actually has good teams this year. At least a lot of teams who are not total bottom of the league.
Yeah.
That makes it, and we're struggling within the division relatively, well, at least to how we should be doing. But that's probably why. I mean, they're probably holding on to hope for a little bit too long after starting better than people thought. But I think teams also they want to hold on to their team until like the last minute of the deadline. Like you could drive up the value the closer you get to the deadline. Teams get desperate. You start bidding wars. So yeah, we're gonna face the Nationals with most of their players there, but. I think those conversations about trades will start this week. I just don't think they'll happen, even for the Reds or anyone else, Nationals, if they're trying to sell. I don't think we're going to see a lot of people moved until we get closer to the deadline because that's when you can get the highest prices for your guys. So we'll see what happens with that. I'm excited for the All-Star game, excited for the Home Run Derby, and then we'll see if we can at least win 2, if not 3, against the Nationals.
Over under on Ellie at half a stolen base during the All-Star game.
Under.
Really? You don't think they're going to use him in a running situation?
I think they're going to try to get him at bat. I don't think they're going to like pinch run him or anything. And I will be surprised. I don't know if he's going to get on base, but you take into all the metrics here. Is he going to actually get a single, not a double or triple? Is he going to steal from second? Is he going to hit a home run and not have a chance to steal at all? With 1 at bat, maybe 2 if you're lucky. I would say no.
I'm going to take the over because I think what they're going to do is I think they're going to put him in like the 3rd inning when the first guy, slow guy, gets on. And let him steal, and then he'll stay there and get an at bat. So that's my prediction. I think that's where they're going to go with it. We'll see.
Well, you're. I mean, hey, if they want to do things that like get people to watch, him and Bobby Witt stealing bases would be a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm with you on the home run derby stuff. I didn't get to mention it earlier, but like also. MLB needs to be paying him a lot of money to do the home run derby because so many young kids would be checking that out. So I would love to see him steal a base. I'd love to see him in the home run derby someday. Not this year, like you mentioned. But I will say the under just because I think he might hit a home run, Rob. Who knows?
I love that. I'm also going to, my wise words of wisdom, the Reds need to lock up Ellie now. They just need to do it. There's no reason not to. Mm-hmm. Give him money. Do what you did with Ellie. Pay him a lot of money and keep him for the next decade. I don't really care. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But this dude is showing the ability and the work ethic to want to get better, and that's all you can ask for. So I think that's going to wrap it up for us, Joe. I want to thank everybody who's been listening. Again, everybody on Spotify, Apple Podcast, all that jazz. Make sure to give us a little bit of that like and subscribe. And with that, guys, we'll catch you on the next one.